one gunshot, $37, and a lifetime on death row. Freddy Eugene Owens was just a teenager when a late-night robbery went terribly wrong. Now, decades later, he sits in his cell, facing execution. But his story isn't just about that one night. It's about a childhood of violence, betrayal, and choices that spiraled beyond repair. And at the very end, Owens still insists the truth has never been told. March 18, 1978. South Carolina. Freddy Eugene Owens was born into hardship from day one. His mother was just 18 years old, a teenager raising a child while still trying to grow up herself. By the time Freddy turned 5, the state placed him in foster care. What should have been a chance at stability turned into more neglect, more rejection, more homes that never truly wanted him. When he eventually went back to live with his mother, safety still wasn't waiting. She had remarried, and Freddy's stepfather brought only more abuse. Freddy witnessed it all, his mother beaten, his childhood ripped apart. And at just 7 years old, he saw something no child should ever see: his grandmother pulling a trigger and shooting someone in cold blood. Trauma didn't just scar him, it buried itself inside him. Years later, doctors would call it antisocial personality disorder, but long before that label, his life had already cracked wide open. The damage never healed. It grew. And one night, it erupted. Greenville, South Carolina. November 1, 1997. It started as a plan. Sloppy. Reckless. Cruel. Freddy Owens, 19 years old, and 3 friends, Lester Young, Nikio Vance, and Stephen Andre Golden, were chasing quick money. Armed and desperate, they split into pairs. Freddy and Golden stepped inside a convenience store. Behind the counter was 41-year-old Irene Granger Graves, a clerk, a mother of 3, simply working her shift. Golden would later testify. Freddy pointed the gun, demanding she open the safe. But Irene couldn't. Seconds dragged like hours. Then one shot. A single bullet to the head. Irene collapsed instantly. When they tore through the store, all they found was $37.29. That was it. $37, and for it, a mother's life was gone. When Freddy rejoined the others, he told them flatly, a woman had been shot. But the law moved quickly. By November 11, 1997, Freddy Eugene Owens was in handcuffs. 19 years old, and his life was already over. Broad River Correctional Institution. September 20, 2024. Now 49, Freddy sat hunched in his cell, a worn Quran in his hands. Its pages were frayed at the edges, softened by years of reading and clutching onto faith. It was all he had left, his prayers, his rhythm, his anchor. But faith couldn't change what was written in the courts. To the state of South Carolina, Freddy Eugene Owens was not a man seeking redemption. He was a man who had crossed the line too many times. Because this case wasn't just about Irene Granger Graves anymore. Even locked away, already condemned, Freddy's violence continued. He took another life, this time behind bars. His victim was Christopher Brian Lee, 28 years old. Serving only 90 days for a traffic offense. He was supposed to go home soon. Instead, he never made it out. According to Freddy's own confession, Lee taunted him, said his cousin had been on the jury, and said Freddy was going to fry. The wrong words at the wrong time. Freddy snapped. First came a blow to the face. Then a pen, stabbed into Lee's eye, then his throat. A bed sheet twisted around his neck. His skull was beaten against concrete. Inside a crowded Greenville County jail cell, surrounded by 10 other inmates, Christopher Lee was killed. From that moment forward, Freddy Eugene Owens wasn't just a teenager who'd made a terrible choice one night. In the eyes of the law, he was beyond saving, branded violent, branded unredeemable. And so, his fate was sealed. On February 17, 1999, Owens returned to court for his sentencing. This time, he described everything in chilling, step-by-step detail, showing no remorse. Any trace of sympathy that might have existed for him vanished instantly. His attorneys pleaded for the jury to see him as a broken child shaped by violence. The prosecution fired back with something far more powerful. Irene Graves' 3 children were now motherless. They argued Owens's rage made him an ongoing danger to anyone around him. That same day, the jury gave its answer: death. Freddy Eugene Owens would be executed. On top of that, for armed robbery, conspiracy, and weapons charges, he was handed 40 more years, sentences that would never actually matter. But it still wasn't the end. Because while one case was wrapping up, another was just beginning. Owens, along with 19-year-old Fred Walker Jr., was now facing a second murder indictment, accused of killing Christopher Lee inside the jail. One life had already been taken, now another. The cycle was complete. From here on, Owens wouldn't be fighting trials to win freedom, only time itself. They say death row is where life freezes. But for Freddy Eugene Owens, it was where the battle began. On September 4, 2001, barely 3 years into his sentence, his lawyers filed their first major appeal. The case reached the South Carolina Supreme Court, and for a brief moment, hope flickered. The court upheld his convictions for robbery and murder, but threw out his death sentence due to procedural errors. Owens would be resentenced. A tiny crack in the wall. But it slammed shut just as quickly. On February 17, 2003, a new jury, same charges, same pain, same outcome, death. Circuit Judge John Kittredge called Irene Graves' killing the worst of the worst, pointing to Owens's violent record as proof he was a continuing threat. Still, Owens's lawyers pushed forward, filing motion after motion. In 2004, they succeeded again. The Supreme Court ordered yet another resentencing. By 2006, Owens was back in court, facing yet another jury. The verdict didn't change. For the third time, he was condemned to die. By 2008, the South Carolina Supreme Court made it final. His death sentence was upheld, with the court citing not just the murders, but his behavior behind bars, setting fires, attacking guards, hoarding weapons. To the court, this wasn't redemption, it was danger. From that point, the appeals slowed. The world moved on. But inside Broad River Correctional Institution, Owens began to transform. By 2015, he had converted to Islam, taking the name Khalil Divine Black Sunala. He studied Arabic, wrote poetry, and filled notebooks with reflections. For the first time, it looked like he was reaching for something beyond violence. But the law hadn't been forgotten. Owens's first execution date was set, October 3, 2008. Postponed. Then rescheduled for January 9, 2009. Delayed again. The reason wasn't mercy, it was logistics. South Carolina's lethal injection drugs had expired, and pharmaceutical companies refused to provide more. The state's execution chamber went silent for more than a decade. That silence ended on June 25, 2021. A new death warrant was signed. But there was a problem. Without the drugs, how should Owens die? Lawmakers passed a chilling new bill. Death row inmates had to choose between the electric chair or the firing squad. Lethal injection would only return if chemicals became available. Owens, like others on death row, fought back. Their attorneys argued both methods violated the Eighth Amendment, cruel and unusual punishment. Experts warned they would mean agony, slow death, psychological torment. The state answered coldly, the law guarantees a lawful death, not a painless one. On July 31, 2024, the South Carolina Supreme Court ruled against him. Electrocution and firing squad were constitutional. With that, the moratorium ended. Owens would be the first. On August 23, 2024, his death warrant was signed. He had until September 6 to choose the chair, the squad, or lethal injection if drugs became available. By default, silence meant the chair. But Owens refused to decide. For him, choosing meant suicide, a sin in Islam. Instead, he asked his attorney, Emily Pavola, to choose for him. She selected lethal injection. But just days before his execution, a shocking revelation surfaced. His accomplice, Stephen Golden, signed a sworn statement saying Owens wasn't the shooter. He admitted he had lied under oath out of fear and claimed the real killer was still alive. Owens's defense rushed to demand a new trial. The court rejected it, saying it was too late. They pointed to Owens's own confessions, to his mother, to his girlfriend, to police. His guilt, they ruled, was already sealed. By 5 p.m. on September 20, 2024, all legal doors had closed. Guards walked Owens to the chamber. Before that, he was offered a final meal: 2 cheeseburgers, French fries, a ribeye steak, 6 chicken wings, 2 strawberry sodas, and a slice of apple pie, all under the $15 limit. He ate quietly, joined only by his spiritual advisor and Pavlova. When the moment came, he looked directly at his lawyer. As he lay on the gurney, strapped down, microphone lowered, he gave no last words. No apology. No statement. Just silence. At 6:45 p.m., the pentobarbital began flowing. His breaths grew heavy, uneven, until finally one last whisper escaped: "Bye." At 6:55 p.m., he was pronounced dead, the first execution in South Carolina in 13 years. Hours later, his mother released a statement. She insisted her son had not killed Irene Graves. She called it injustice. But the witnesses were gone, the lights dimmed, and the chamber was silent. Freddy Eugene Owens's story shows how a single violent choice can ripple through generations. Justice may have been served, but the questions and the pain will never disappear. And if you want more true crime stories told with depth, detail, and the raw truth behind the headlines, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss the next case.